Holiday, the erudite and dynamic lecturer at Ravensbourne College, organised the Ravensbourne Symposium that I'm talking about for the next few minutes for the 23rd of May, 1966. Ravensbourne College was an amalgam of a number of other colleges in London and a very lively place. Its alumni included people who, among them, Bruce Oldfield, Stella McCartney, and for a very short time, David Bowie. Previous teachers there include, is that okay? Yeah. Include Frank Albach and also Ardizone. It's easy, too easy, I think, to see Ravensbourne as just a forerunner to Dias in the following September. And I think its meaning emerges if we see it also not just as short, one day, but as embedded in a particular circle of people and a particular cluster of ideas between 64 and 67 in Britain. What a vast number of interconnections, exclaimed Dom Sylvester Huadad in a letter to Ivor Davies after that day. Interconnectedness. And rapport was one of the words that Ivor Davies used in the letter which replies to that, in which he contributes to Sylvester's report on Ravensbourne by giving his own impression of what had happened. And he uses the word rapport and also theatrical on Gustav Metzger's demonstration, focusing interestingly not on its end products, the colourful slides, but on what he saw as a performance where a darkened room of spectators waited while there were Gustav's activities eventually emerging in the slide. I think the various titles in the archive of documents and letters for the Ravensbourne Day interestingly express the fluidity of what it was about. And that fluidity is itself the subject. This is the poster which Ivor Davies prepared for Peter Holiday. Movement, destruction, creation, creation, movement, destruction, destruction, creation, movement, and on and on and on. Ideas of movement, of transmutation. The other titles used, of course, included the word auto-destruction, chemical change, destruction stroke creation. I've known of a student infuriated that you can't easily pin down what the subject was. What was the subject of the symposium that Peter Holiday organised on the 23rd of May, asks Sylvester in one of the paragraphs of his report early on. I'd like to say that we need to be careful not to look back at Ravensbourne retrospectively from September Dias. This, I think, could be seen as a very different approach to and take on, and for the artist, practice of destruction as interconnected with these other concepts and values. It had distinctive elements and a distinctive context. Christine Stiles says that symposium is the wrong word for a lot of Dias. It was a platform, one might say, for individuals who didn't know each other. Ravensbourne was people who were already corresponding with each other, learning from each other, excited with each other, meeting with each other. And synopsis and discussion were central. Peter Holliday's symposia always made discussion with the students and the other spectators as important as the presentations by distinguished speakers. And Gustav, in a letter to Ivor Davies, rejoices that there's going to be discussion. Let it go on for 4 hours, he says, until everybody is finally tired and wants to go home. I think one can also see what the circle of ideas that are, of which the day in May is a sort of node, were by looking both very briefly at the speakers who were there and 2 who were projected but couldn't come. The concrete poet, Sylvester Huedard. This is his very concrete, very three-dimensional, he called it mechanical use of one of those origami opening things for a poem. Mark Boyle, a great practitioner of slides and light shows, with his partner Joan Hills, who wasn't there at the day, though they usually operated together. There is one of his slides. Ivor Davies, who'd already been experimenting with the forces of fire, doing their own work of destruction. This is a close-up of that picture, which he worked on from 1950 till 64, returning to it. Burnt paper, burnt poetry. Someone who in the end didn't come, a great supporter of Gustav that Mathieu's just mentioned, Frank Popper. And apart from his important promotion of kinetic art, I'd like to mention this volume, translated into many European languages, which advocates that art should be also participation, because I think that sums up what the Ravensbourne Symposia were. Peter Holliday focused each year on a subject. Before 1966 subjects had been motion, colour, and there were about 7 other annual Ravensbourne Symposia for his students after the one on autodestructive art and all the other titles. Another projected speaker was Richard Hamilton, with, of course, his enormous interest and expertise in technological art. And a distinctive element in the Ravensbourne Symposium is poetry, words and typography. Again, with all the people who were gathered there, their interest in this went back a long way. This is just one of Ivor Davies's works, which is both poetry and a visual presentation. And in his work, and of course much more in Sylvester's, one sees an attempt to take poetry to an extreme of the impersonal. Going back to the element, finally, of the large time given over to discussion and the encouragement that the students should be full participants. A very interesting challenge from Mark Boyle emerges in the report of the discussion. He accused Gustav of trying to keep control over what he felt should ethically be random chemical developments. Gustav parried. He didn't actually give a justification or a response. But Ivor Davies intervened and said that perhaps what Gustav was doing was self-metamorphosis rather than auto-destruction. After the Ravensbourne Symposium, Gustav writes in a letter that he has the idea that it'd be wonderful if there could be a larger scale symposium in the September on the subject of destruction. And the day at Ravensbourne had started with a rapid lecture and survey by Ivor Davies, partly studying the number of senses in which destructivism and destruction had been used in art history. And in the discussion on the actual day, he warned against overusing the word destruction because it had a confusing number of senses in art history. Thank you.